Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer in that order. Welcome everyone. About a year ago or so, I did a video on a binder that I found in a box in my parents' basement. And it was a binder of homemade baseball cards that I had made with a friend, Aaron, back, when I was 12, 13, 14 years old in the early 1990s. And yeah, I mean, it was really fun to revisit. I had this entire binder of Chris Sewall baseball cards, which was pretty cool. I'll include a link to that video in the description below if anyone wants to check it out. But I recently went through some other items from that box, and yeah, it had other sort of baseball card related items from back then when I was a kid, and there's some really interesting things that sort of speak to my mindset back then, and some funny parallels to today. So I thought it'd be really fun to share here in a video. This is sort of a very personal video, but hope you enjoy. So a couple just, baseball items to share before I get to the cards. Here's a poster I made of myself. You can see in the bottom right, it says Chris Sewall Jr. in action. I'm not a junior. I don't know why it said junior, but obviously that was because I was a big fan of Cal Ripken Jr. But upper left, it says deep to left, it's gone. That's me batting. On the right, it says strike three, you're out of there. I was definitely a better pitcher than I was a hitter. And the lower left, it says the pitch shot right back to the pitcher. He dives, makes a stupendous catch, and throws to first for the double play. I doubt that that's actually what happened on that play, but yeah, we'll go with it. So around that age, I was just a massive sports fan, and particularly baseball. I was just a psychotic baseball fan, but I also really had an appreciation for writing, and my dad sort of recognized that. And there wasn't any sort of article writing things going on in school, so he had me write an article once a week, just kind of as a hobby. And initially I started off doing random stuff like here's life as a 12-year-old, but then I switched over to sports because I just wanted to do all my writing on sports. So I found a bunch of these articles in this box. Here's an article I wrote about the Pro Bowl one year. Here's an article where I complained that Cecil Fielder was not selected for the All-Star team. Here's interesting facts on baseball this season. I actually read this. There were some pretty interesting facts here, but we'll save that for another time. Now, this one I want to brag about a little bit. Back then, and these statistics are from 1991, the 1991 season. So I'm guessing I wrote this late 1991, early 1992. Now, keep in mind, back then, you couldn't just go on Google or, the internet and look up Fred McGriff's, 1991 statistics. It just didn't exist. Maybe you could buy a magazine at the end of the year, which would have it all or something like that. But most likely, I got all this data from the backside of baseball cards, which is kind of cool to think about. Back then, there were no advanced statistics. There was only counting stats, like how many home runs did you get, how many RBIs did you get, how many stolen bases did you get. There was batting average, and slugging was used a little bit, and maybe on-base percentage, but that was really it. Really, people just looked at counting stats, whereas today we have all sorts of advanced statistics, wins above replacement, OPS plus, offensive win probability added, and these sort of things, which really deep dive analyze into a player's overall performance. But back then, I created a advanced formula to determine how good a player was. It was 0.5 runs plus 2 home runs plus RBIs plus stolen bases plus 200 times your batting average. And you can see you get the total points on the right. Now, to be fair, this formula doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to why it would sort of value a player, but it was an idea ahead of its time, from a 13-year-old here. So I think we can all agree that clearly I deserve credit for coming up with the idea for advanced statistics in baseball, and I'm sure I'll eventually get the credit I'm due. Now, a few of the articles were about baseball cards and collecting cards, and it's all baseball. Like, there's no mention of football cards or basketball cards or hockey cards. I did collect that stuff back then as well, but at least in my world, it was just so baseball, dominant. I would say 90% of all the cards I interacted with were baseball. I selected two of the articles to go over here in the video, as I think they're kind of interesting as to, what a 13-year-old collector's mindset was in the hobby back in 1992, and, how that sort of applies to the hobby today. So the first article was titled Tips on Collecting Baseball Cards, and I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just read some of the snippets. It opens with, baseball cards are one of the most popular hobbies in America. Cards go back a long way, and the first cards were in 1894. It's not actually correct, but I was 13, so give me a break. Cards go back before 1894, but it then continues with some collecting tips, and it says you cannot collect everything and should go for certain things, whether it's certain players or certain teams or certain sets. It should be what you want and not what the hottest item is. You should collect for fun and not for the money. I personally like to collect certain players. So let me just interject and say I was very proud of my 13-year-old self when I read that one, as I literally still give that exact advice today. There's then a couple paragraphs about what brands exist. It suggests that you should get a price guide, and some tips on how to store your cards. And then the last, paragraph reads, the last important thing about your collection is the condition of your cards. Don't buy a bad condition card. Unless it's a very important card that you need, don't buy it. Also, if you see a deal on a card or a number of cards that is too good to believe, then it probably is. There is a very good chance that the card is in very bad condition and the dealer is trying to rip you off. So that last part really speaks to something that I feel strongly about regarding the hobby today. And I've mentioned it a few times on the channel. And that is, I hear all the time people will say things like grading has destroyed the hobby. And I understand that sentiment. I don't agree with it, but sure, I understand the feeling. But it drives me crazy when people will say things like, before grading, things were so pure and innocent, and it was all about the collector, and it was all, it wasn't about the money. That's just not true at all. Before grading, it was the wild, wild west regarding condition of cards and trimming and fake. It was so easy for a dealer to sell a fake or a trimmed card because there was no way to verify it, and most collectors aren't, sharp enough to identify these sort of things. It's very easy for a dealer to claim a card was near mint and there'd be a small crease on the back, which you might easily miss, and sell it at a near mint price, and buyers would get ripped off like this. I was a 13-year-old boy, and I understood at the time that dealers regularly did this, tried to rip people off by overgrading their cards, and there was no way to sort of third-party verify that. And yeah, while I understand grading may have brought some negatives to the table, to the hobby as a whole, it definitely brought some significant positives. It's gotten rid of a lot, or the vast majority of trimmed cards and fake cards being sold, especially at the high-end level. People lying about the grades is, much harder, obviously, with a graded card. So I think it's brought quite a few positives to the table as well that are often overlooked. All right, second article to show you is called Card Market Goes Crazy. And this one's really funny to think about in terms of like the context of the sports card hobby today. It opens with, I am a serious baseball card collector. I am not rich. I am not very lucky when it comes to the lottery. I did not have a quadrillionaire for an uncle who died and gave me all of it. I do not own a gold mine. Do you get the picture, card companies? I am a 13-year-old boy with a now more or less impossible goal. Last year, my goal was 20 cents away. Now it's over $100 away. So in short, what I was talking about was that my collecting goal at the time was to get one of every Cal Ripken card listed in Beckett Monthly Magazine, and I was only one away, and it was a 20-cent card. But when the 1992 releases came out, there were a bunch of inserts, and inserts were sort of a new idea at the time. There were a bunch of really expensive inserts, and they added up to over $100, and there was just no way, as a 13-year-old, I was going to be able to afford, one of each Cal Ripken insert. It was just way too expensive. Now, I know for a fact at the time I did not have a 1982 Topps Traded Ripken. I got my first one in high school, so I'm not sure if I just sort of cheated for the sake of the story there, but yeah, the point stands. At the time, there were 4 new insert Ripken cards of Fleer Ultra Award winners, Fleer Ultra All-Stars, Score Team Pinnacle, and Score Pinnacle Rookie Idols, and you can see they had a Beckett value of over $100. What's funny is these cards today, you can pick these up for $1 or $2, maybe $5 at the absolute most. I finished the article with get the picture. With my $7 a week in 4 months, I will have enough, provided I buy no cards in between. If I do that and I am successful, then when I have them all and no more money, the 1993s will be on their way. Why don't I just collect Fred Manrique? He won't have any $50 insert cards because I don't like Fred Manrique. I like Cal Ripken. Definitely had some sassiness to my writing there, and I'm not sure why I was picking on Fred Manrique, but it's sort of funny to think about someone complaining about there being too many cards of a player back in 1992 when they have 4 cards valued between $20 and $50, whereas today, the stars of today have thousands and thousands of cards every year, dozens and dozens of 101s, and lots of cards into the 4 and 5 figures all over the place. So it's sort of a funny concept to try to collect one of every card of a player. Obviously, that would be beyond impossible today. But to give a little more context to the time period, like I mentioned, inserts was sort of a new concept around this time. But 1992 is actually, I would say, the first year where like all the major brands did it. Like there were inserts before 90 and 91, a couple brands sort of experimenting with it. But by 92, they all sort of realized we need to do this, and they started making them notably rarer than before. So yeah, there were there was never $50 insert cards in 1990 or 1989. That just wasn't a thing. But by 92 it was. So this was sort of the first year where there were a number of higher dollar cards, higher dollar for the time, of course, than there had been in previous years. And it kind of got me thinking about the hobby today, because we hear the exact same complaints today. Like there's too many cards, and Cards are too expensive, and I mean, literally the exact same things I was saying back in 1992. And it sort of got me thinking in the other direction. Like I think the hobby's evolving and in a sense getting better. And yeah, when things change, there's a feeling of like, oh, we lost something that was so great back then, and there might be a little bit of that. But I think overall things are evolving and getting better. You have so many more options today. You can collect in many, many more unique and creative ways today than you could back in 1992. You can collect, cheap stuff, mid-level stuff, high-end stuff. You can get cards graded or not. You didn't have these options back then. And I think a lot of people, including myself, tend to feel like, oh, things were so innocent and great back then. But I think the reality is the hobby's evolving, getting more interesting. And if we went back to like 1992 now, it would seem very, very, I don't know, boring and simple and not very exciting. But I don't know if that's true or not. That was sort of the thought I had in the moment. But really hope everyone enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it. Obviously a trip down memory lane from my childhood. So thank you everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Eat your vegetables. May the force be with you. And see you again next time. Thanks everyone.